Hello, this is J. Hampton Norman, the producer and director of Norman Films. Once again, we are going to bring you a spectacular. As you recall in the past of the many adventures, this will be one of the greatest. I take pleasure in presenting, for your entertainment, the Atlantic Adventure.
To fly the North Atlantic, this is the challenge. The realm of the seafarer, and now we're going to make the trip in this beautiful Rockwell 690B Commander. We will be departing from Spanair at Forest Hill, Maryland, on our challenge of the Atlantic. Buyer walks away from the 690B to greet the rest of the crew as they arrive at the Forest Hill Airport. This is Bob Berry, who is the owner of 81877, and he will pilot her across the Atlantic. We're just hopping to get started. There's Jane Bassett, and of course your producer, Jay Norman. And our route of flight will be from Forest Hill at the Spanair headquarters to Goose Bay, Labrador, Narsarsuaq, Greenland, Reykjavik, Iceland, and finally to our destination in Coventry, England. This entire flight will be slightly over 4,000 miles. In the early dawn of the north. We have climbed to 29,000 feet. We pass over New York, over Quebec. We are getting a boost from the jet stream. We're making nearly 300 knots as the sun rises over the horizon of the cold north. It is reported at Goose Bay the temperature on the ground is minus 20. So we are warm and comfortable in the roomy and luxurious cabin of our beautiful 690B. Bob and Fred concentrate on the navigation, how far below the first fringes of snow and ice appear. And we discover in our cabin a fly. This is the first transatlantic fly I've ever met. And below us, open country, frozen lakes appear as we prepare for our arrival at Goose Bay, Labrador. We talk to the tower at Goose Bay, and Jane swats our only transatlantic fly as Fred and Bob prepare for our landing at cold Goose Bay, and the gear comes down slowly. This cold and first leg of our trip took us just about 4 hours. As Bob lines up with the runway, he's pleased that we averaged a little over 300 miles an hour on our first step of the big trip. We touched down and taxied into the terminal at Goose Bay. We found that due to the cold air, our tires were nearly half inflated, and we had to add some air. We also checked the weather for our next stop in Greenland at North Sassuat, and we found the weather not to be so good. So we may stay over at Goose Bay and wait for better weather. The major drawback in flying the Atlantic is weather. Anyone planning the trip, especially for the first time, should bring along a reserve of patience, because weather delays are common. However, it's reported that many crossings have been made in totally VFR conditions. Their airplane, while we have no, the ravens fly from our motel window in cold, cold Goose Bay. Next morning, the weather in Sassuat is reported as good, but the temperature in Goose Bay is minus 30 with a wind chill index of minus 60. We wonder if our 690B will start for our next 747-mile leg of a big trip. When we got to the airport, we were pleasantly surprised at the first touch of the starter. 81877 fired up immediately, and we welcomed the flood of warm air into the cold and frigid cabin. We are not too sad to leave the cold tarmac of Goose Bay Airport, also known as Happy Valley. We climb out in the early morning dawn to 21,000 feet on our next leg to Narsarsuaq. Actually, about an 800-mile leg when you consider the land portion. As we fly over some broken clouds, the shoreline of Labrador fades away, and we are high over the cold Labrador Sea. The outside air temperature, reported at 40,000, is minus 44. We are maintaining 21,000 as we start over the sea, and the ice packs appear offshore. Fred comes back to discuss the flight with the rest of the crew. During part of this leg, one must be prepared for a little bit of dead reckoning because there is a small space when we do not have any actual means of navigation. However, the radio beacon at Simutac in Narsassuaq will soon be coming in as Fred peers through the windshield towards the distant shores of Greenland. And soon we spot a iceberg outside the window. Norm, in the summertime, this area is a breeding place of icebergs. And this means, of course, that Greenland can't be very far away. That place in Narsassuaq must be up the correct fjord, as there are 3 fjords leading to the airport, which is 50 miles from the shore. 2 fjords are blind. We must get the right one. It has been said many times that Greenland and Iceland were not named properly. Greenland should be called Iceland, and Iceland should be called Greenland. A few miles from this rugged shoreline is the great ice patch of Greenland, which extends for thousands of miles almost to the North Pole. The radio beacon at Simutac, which guided us here, is located on one of those snow-covered rocky points. Yesterday, this area was covered by a violent snowstorm, and you can see, to make your approach, it's strictly VFR. The flight up the frozen river to Narsassuaq is an exciting one, with towering 3,000 to 5,000 foot mountains on each side. If it's overcast, one must fly up the fjord in a tunnel in order to get to the airport, hoping, of course, the tunnel stays clear. Yes, Bob, we hope you don't keep your head down in the cockpit too long. Your eye on those hills ahead. Fred observes the scenery. The great ice cap will be on our right as we go in, and we're going to fly over it on our way to Iceland. We're now approaching the Narsassuaq Airport. It comes as a surprise around the bend. The airport is on a slope, built up. It's a one-way airport. At the other end is the Greenland ice cap. One way in and one way out. I spent 3 weeks here in May one time, and the fjord just barely thaws out, and the hills get a slight touch of green. It's not grass, it's more or less moss. We approached the North Gatwick Airport in the cold, clear morning. There's the airport, and there is the pier where I spent 3 weeks one time in the scenic Greenland. This airfield was built during the war for the delivery of fighter aircraft to Europe. There's the pier where I spent a glorious 3 weeks. The runway at North Gatwick is 6,500 feet long, and now it is only an outpost of the Danish government. As you know, Denmark is the custodian, guardian, and the flag of Greenland. A very nice landing, Bob. We are glad to arrive at North Gatwick. The outside air temperature is a pleasant 10 degrees. We are met by a friendly Danish girl who drives us to the metro office with some weather. We take some gas. We have a wonderful lunch there, and I get to meet a man in the metro office who was there at the same time that I spent my sojourn in North Gatwick. We were quite pleased to get on the ground at North Gatwick. We had heard some pretty bad stories about the flight across to North Gatwick, and of course in the reception that one would get when you arrive here. But we're happy to say the flight was an easy one. The reception was warm. In fact, we enjoyed our visit. We stayed a little longer than we had originally planned. And the mood and the tempo changed. With our priority parking at Gate 1. Jane says she's about ready to leave for our next leg to Reykjavik. The weather in Reykjavik is not too good, but since it has full facilities, ILS and all, we're not concerned. We take one last look at the towering cliffs and mountains of North Gatwick as Bob leaves the observation deck, and we'll soon say goodbye. And she's very friendly and very smiling, and we'll be departing from Greenland soil. For, as Fred would put it, the Greenland ice. Actually, we're going to fly over the ice cap, which is almost 2 miles thick. Our flying time on the last leg from Goose Bay to Narsarsuaq, including everything up the fjord and all, was under 3 hours. A pretty respectable time. The Spacehole turboprops start instantly, and we'll soon be taxiing out for a downhill takeoff from Narsarsuaq over the ice cap to Reykjavik, Iceland. Fred steadies himself and gets settled for the takeoff and the ensuing 800-mile flight to Reykjavik. We will be departing down the fjord, a climbing left turn over the ice cap. The Greenland ice cap is truly a no man's land. There's no place to go up there. During my earlier visit, we did go over and fly over the area in a C-47 on skis.